Ora, meus amigos, estamos aqui para mais uma sessão de vídeos e neste vídeo que vai ser composto de pequenas partes. Aqui vamos falar hoje da história dos primeiros povos que chegaram na América, ou seja, da nossa presença na América, presença dos nossos ancestrais bantus lá na América, ok? Então, esse objetivo é exatamente desconstruir a mentira histórica que vem sendo ensinada já há muito tempo, da história do Colombo, que chegou na América e não sei o que, e blá blá blá. Ok, nesse primeiro trecho, como eu sempre digo, a própria supremacia, eles próprios também vão se descobrindo as carecas. Tá? Por acaso, tem já muitas pessoas que acham curioso a própria mentira que os antepassados deles criaram. Aqui, esse homem aqui da supremacia, que vai falar nesse primeiro trecho, ele vai exatamente confirmar a mentira que os antepassados deles andaram a nos ensinar. Ele vai vir confirmar a mentira. Então prestem atenção. Ok. Agora aqui, o homem assim meio frescalhão, parece que tem um ar assim de meio amaricado, mas ele vai dizer as verdades aí, né? Já que vocês gostam de ouvir quando é o branco que fala. Então vamos ver aí, ele vai falar aí, vai mostrar, desmascarar mentiras sobre o descobrimento da América que os antepassados dele andaram a nos ensinar este tempo todo. Ok? Essa é mais uma para aprender, mas haverá mais outras partes que falam do mesmo assunto. Se liga aí! Povos irmãos aí que estão na América, mesmo que estão na América Latina, entendem português e muitos sabem falar inglês, também vão entender aí que isto tem legendas. Os irmãos africanos que estão lá na América Latina, isso também é muito bom para eles. Pronto, assistam aí.
What I'm about to say is going to upset some people right next here. Okay. Christopher Columbus did not discover America. Exactly. I mean, never mind the question of like how you can discover a place where the inhabitants are watching you arrive from the shore. They weren't wearing pants. Is that what somebody said? I like that. So anyway, there were actually many other mariners before Columbus that discovered America as well. Decades earlier, even eons earlier, there were so many people that were coming across these islands and this continent. But it's only been in the last century that evidence has surfaced and continually grown to indicate that many of these pre-Columbian explorers might have come from
meus
Africa.
amigos, já aqui lapso aqui.
So the first scientist
Vamos recuar aqui esse vídeo aqui. Vamos recuar esse vídeo aqui. Há uma coisa aqui que escapou ele dizer. Yeah.
Right next here. Okay. Christopher Columbus did not discover America.
Ok. Alright. Não tinha visto.
Exactly. I mean, never mind the question of like how you can discover a place where the inhabitants are watching you arrive from the shore. They weren't wearing pants. Is that what somebody said? I like that. So anyway, there were actually many other mariners before Columbus that discovered America as well. Decades earlier, even eons earlier, there were so many people that were coming across these islands and this continent. But it's only been in the last century that evidence has surfaced and continually grown to indicate that many of these pre-Columbian explorers might have come from Africa. So the first scientist to promote this possibility was Leo Wiener. Born in Russia, Wiener immigrated to the United States in the late 19th century on his way to British Honduras, where he planned to open a vegetarian commune. Well, When that turned out not to be the dream job he expected, he moved back to the United States and he became a professor at Harvard University, as one does. But in his time in Mesoamerica, he started noticing things. There were lots of things that led him to encounter certain discoveries that made him consider that possibly if the origins of American civilization might actually be in Africa. So he observed so many linguistic and botanical and other similarities that between 1920 and 1922, he published an extensive 3-volume piece called Africa and the Discovery of America. Now, unfortunately, this is the 1920s, so as yet no serious archaeological evidence had been done to, or work had been done to support his botanical theories, because everyone knows over raiding tombs in Egypt and things like that. Nod to Howard Carter. So he didn't have a whole lot of other stuff than the names to support him. However, he knew that other clues must exist. For example, he pointed out that Columbus himself was aware that African mariners had preceded him. In his diary of his second voyage, Columbus tells of how the natives of Hispaniola actually had given him gold-tipped metal spearheads that they said were brought by black-skinned people who had come in large boats from the south and southeast. Coincidence? I think not. No. So what's interesting about that, so upon returning to Spain, is that he actually took the spearheads and he sent them away and they had them assayed, and it turned out to be that these spearheads were covered in this metal this alloy that the inhabitants called guanin, and the metallurgists actually found out that this was an alloy of 32 parts. It was like 18 of gold, 6 of silver, 8 of copper, which matched the metal used in spearheads made in Western Africa for thousands of years, as carried by medieval African warriors, including the Mali and the Moors. The West Africans even called this metal guanine, the same name used by the natives of Hispaniola. But nothing more was said about that. Conspiracy. Well, probably because, in the interest of Spain, it was in their best interest that they didn't want to have any challenges to the discovery and the claims of the islands of the West Indies. Well, as the poem goes, or it should anyway, in 1493, Columbus stole all he could see. Yeah, so on his second voyage, which was 10 times larger than the first, Columbus went on a frantic but unsuccessful island-hopping trip to find gold and spices. He carried along several natives from his newly discovered San Salvador, which the inhabitants called Guanahanvi. Another island that the natives pointed out, which was really large, and was called Soameto. Soameto. Now, Columbus continued going around whimsically renaming every island he could find, but, Leo Wiener, being the curious person and the linguist that he was, and the etymologist, he couldn't help noticing that the origin of these many place names and botanical names in Mesoamerica actually sounded distinctly like other languages in Africa, particularly Bantu and even Arabic. Wiener and numerous other botanists have also puzzled over the presence of certain plants that predated Columbus but originated in Africa. For example, the calabash bottlegourds. Now, this is a species originally from West Africa, where they were well cultivated in America before Europeans arrived, even long before they existed in Indonesia or Polynesia. So, in fact, the Pacific was the last place that bottlegourds actually reached and expanded to. Pardon my covfefe. Well, if it were not for transatlantic trade pre-Columbian times, it would be very difficult to explain how certain plants, such as the yam, the sweet potato, domesticated cotton, peanuts, and tobacco, reached both West Africa and the Americas. The spread of the plantain is particularly noteworthy because it could not remain viable if it was carried in salt water. Well, in the 1640s, a Brazilian botanist named George Marcgrave speaking of botany, Ricola. No, there we go. So thank you very much. So the Brazilian botanist George Marcgrave wrote that the establishment of a particular varieties of plantains in this region stands as a strong argument for ancient maritime contact between the Americas and Africa. That's bananas. B-A-B-A-N-A-S. That's right. Thank you. All right. All right. Yeah. Okay. So, how do these plants and languages? That's going to be good for the video. All right. Fix and pose. All right. Use the cough drop. Okay. So, how do these plants and languages and other cultural elements get to the Americas? Well, some believe. What's that? Well, you're cheating. Well, some people believe that, over thousands of years, Africans migrated out of Africa and then over the Bering Strait, then down into South America, and things like that. Well, another explanation exists, and so get ready. There you go. Let it out of your system. Awesome. Africans had ships. In fact, they had four kinds of. They had unbelievable. They had a shipload of vessels, and they had away. The anchors way. So in fact, they had four kinds of vessels. And Nubian pottery. This is an example of Nubian pottery with a painting on it that shows a long-hold pottery art. That shows either a long-hold boat or a papyrus raft or a hauled-out canoe. And then this other painting beside it is from, the first one was from 3000 BC, and this is a bird's-eye view of an oared riverboat in Chad. And it dates from 3500 BCE. Now, the Africans of Guinea also had dugout canoes hewn from these monumental trees on the coast there. In 1500, was just a few years after Columbus's voyage, the Portuguese captain Pacheco Pereira wrote, "In this country can be found the largest canoes made of a single trunk. Some are so large that they hold 80 men." Now, the West Africans were known to lash two dugout canoes together, side by side, and no one questions the seaworthiness of a similar type of Polynesian catamarans. Well, here's a 15th century Portuguese painting of sailing canoes on the Congo estuary. The Portuguese, like Captain Pereira, had heard that African traders were visiting Brazil in the mid-1400s. So to demonstrate that mariners from West Africa could have sailed to the Americas using papyrus vessels as early as 2000 BCE, the Norwegian adventurer Tor Heyerdahl actually used ancient shipbuilding techniques in order to construct and sail the Ra 1 and the Ra 2 in 1969 and 70. And generally, some type of sailing vessel will average about 100 miles per day, even without sails. And in an ocean current, something like a raft or a reed boat can average about 60 miles a day. Now, Islamic historian Amir Hajib reported that voyages west from Mali were happening in the year 1311, just 150 years before Columbus. Now, when he asked the Mali emperor, shown here, incidentally, holding a globe of the world made of solid gold, asked him, well, tell me about this rumor about Atlantic travel. And he said that his predecessor had commissioned an expedition with 200 ships filled with men and a similar number with gold and water and enough provisions for 2 years. And he said, go out and find something. And if you don't come back, so you find something or you run out of food. And unfortunately, only one ship returned, and the captains told the emperor that we sailed for a very long time until we met with what seemed like a river with a strong current flowing in the open sea. I was the last ship, and I turned where I was and did not enter the current. The others disappeared. I do not know what became of them. So, well, this story seems to describe the trade wind-driven equatorial current, or the Canary Current. Now, I apologize if anyone has any cats on their lap at the moment, but so we basically have two rivers two circular rivers in the ocean here, and you can see it's very easy for Africans from the south and the Angola regions to come up towards the equator going westwards, or from the western coast of Africa north of the equator to go eastwards along that same current. But you know, this Mercator projection doesn't really, in terms of cartography, Boo Mercator, it really doesn't do it justice. So let me just, I did this little animation for you to show that they could have taken the Canary Current up and around, and then they go over they fall off the edge of the Earth, and then they come back and they make landfall back again in Cape Verde. So it is definitely possible. So it definitely had to do that. Now, at least a dozen explorers, including Constantine Ravenous, reported seeing blacks upon reaching the New World. In fact, in 1513, Spanish explorer Vasco Núñez de Balboa, who you might know because people named a very popular dance after him. Anyway, so when Balboa was there, he said he met members of a tribe of Ethiopians in Panama. And according to Balboa's log, these men came from a totally black village that was 2 days' journey away. And he figured that these blacks had come from Ethiopia at a much earlier date. So there are also examples of physical evidence, including pre-Columbian African skeletons, which have been found throughout the Americas. Now, dating between 800 BCE and 300 CE, these murals are from the Temple of the Warriors at Chichen Itza. Now, they clearly feature, the color version is easier to see, but they clearly feature three races. And it's depicting black and Indian allies and a battle against white invaders. Now, because of their long blonde hair jewelry, a skin-hulled boat that we have here, right there, and also the fact that they're fighting naked, which was common for warriors from Ireland, they believe that these are Celtic warriors. And because this mural shows that blacks are clearly fighting on the side of the Mayans, that they must have been integrated into society much longer before this painting was done in order to form that form of alliance. Now, there are numerous pre-Columbian figurines with striking similarities to ancient African artwork, and they've been found in Central and South America. In southeastern Mexico, there are 18 rock statues of heads up to 11 feet tall that are facing the ocean, looking east. Now, archaeologists call them the Olmec colossal heads, after the people that carved them, and they were produced for 50 to 200 years and date from at least 900 BCE, when they were mysteriously buried for some reason. So now think about it. It took enormous effort to quarry these. The smallest one was 6 tons, so 6 to 50-ton blocks, to quarry them and carry them 75 miles away from the quarry, and then carve them and then erect them. These people that they modeled them after must have been important. Whoever they were, they must have been important to be remembered or obeyed or worshipped. Well, Jose Megliar Serrano, the archaeologist who first uncovered them, he pointed out that facial features look amazingly like African blacks, and they all display distinctive headgear or protective helmets. Now, however, some people think that these are actually the facial figures of overweight babies. Yeah, I think they needed to wear helmets when they were babies, if they think that. So, and then still others find it easier to believe that instead of Africans, those depicted or responsible for these sculptures, and as well as the Mesoamerican pyramids, were not African Americans, but dun dun dun. So why is it that so many people have never heard of this alternative of American discovery by the continent's nearest neighbors? So, I mean, look, now the thing, exactly, whoa, where'd all the continents go? So, this is, look at how close this is. I mean, white people don't think that you could go this is closer compared to more than twice the distance that Columbus sailed. This will win a drink for you in a bar game sometime. Which state is closest to Africa? Maine. Yeah, look, see there, you got to need a globe for this. Look at that. Versus, yeah, geometry, science. There you go. Yes. So anyway, and so very few Americans know this. And why is this? So having examined textbooks throughout for years up until 2018, James W. Lowen says that although some books cite the alternative possibility that Vikings, Norse, or even Irish may have reached America first, not one textbook, old or new, mentions the West Africans. So whether or not you give any credence to this admittedly controversial Afrocentric theory, it's obvious that Columbus was not the first to discover America, but the last. So why did he make such an indelible mark on Western people's minds? Well, conquest may have a lot to do with it. Right, Eurocentrism. Unlike the mundanity of perhaps thousands of years of peaceful African transatlantic trade, the quest for gold and world domination makes a much better story. And, the good Queen Isabella was so proud of her fella that she immediately equipped Columbus with 17 ships, 1,500 men, 200 cannons, crossbows, cavalry, and even 20 attack dogs for a second voyage. And another, and another. The story of Columbus remains the most widely accepted version of American discovery, most likely because it was the most recent, the most well-armed, the most documented, and the most similar in appearance to the authors of American textbooks. And one other thing that should be pointed out here is that in the years after Columbus discovered America, in 400 years, 20 million Africans were stripped from the coast of Africa, half of them dying in transit for slavery, who knows how many fleeing inland. And at the same time, within 5 years of Columbus's arrival in the New World, 90% of the indigenous population had died from disease or murder, 90%. So the fact is that leaves few people to have a written or memory or an oral history of the seafaring of their African discoverers. Historian Samuel D. Marble wrote, as a subject for research, the possibility of African discovery of America has never been a tempting one for American historians. We choose our own history, or more accurately, we select those vistas of history that more or less kind of explain to have the promise of the greatest satisfaction for ourselves. And we have had little appetite to explore the possibility that our founding father was a black man. So nevertheless, there is considerable evidence to suggest that African mariners also participated in this great adventure, no less than Vikings, the Portuguese, Spaniards, Celts, Chinese, Polynesians, and Arabs, and others. So now I would like to raise a toast to all the discoverers of America before Columbus, wherever you may came from. May more of us discover you. Thank you. Woo, heads up. All right, Aneta.
Ok, vamos ao próximo trecho. Agora, esse próximo trecho. Bom, as legendas, como sempre, são legendas do YouTube, e então às vezes não são muito perfeitas, mas deu para captar a mensagem.
A tendência é apanhar o sentido.
E apanhar o sentido. Eu sei que a malta dos palopes moçambicanos, angolanos,
Brasileiros.
devem, todos os africanos devem acompanhar essas mensagens aqui, todos, mesmo os africanos de outras expressões linguísticas, devem acompanhar, mas eu sei que principalmente os nossos irmãos angolanos, eles já não querem ser africanos, eles são angolanos, como eles já não querem ser africanos, eu não estou a falar toda a gente que acompanha nesse canal, eu estou a falar para aqueles que estão aqui, caíram de paraquedas, porque viram os nossos comentários em outros canais e viram curiosos aqui, caíram de paraquedas e ainda não abriram a mente. Esses que se dizem angolanos, mas não querem ser africanos, eu sei que essa história não vai lhes interessar. porque eles têm uma diarreia mental. Ali naquele cérebro dele só sai diarreia. Diarreia sai nos intestinos, mas dele está a sair pelo cérebro, tá bem? Então chama diarreia mental. Porque o indivíduo não quer saber quem era, de onde veio, quem são os irmãos, quem foi para onde, quem não foi. Então torna-se uma diarreia mental, inconsequente. Yeah. Eu não estou a ofender os que me seguem no canal, que acreditam no nosso trabalho. Esse aí, estão de parabéns.
Também é
Yeah.
só para parar de dizer que...
Porque-
Para tirar o mito de que todos eles, que todos da diáspora foram como escravos. Para ver se tiramos também esse mito, porque nem todos foram como escravos, já estavam lá. Ah? Já estavam lá. Se vocês acompanharam o vídeo de ontem, vocês viram como é que muitos deles morriam, uns davam comida, muitos comiam.
Yeah.
Como é que a América veio ter essa população que tem?
Ok, nós já vamos comentar melhor. Vamos seguir agora os próximos trechos. Temos ainda aqui umas pedaladas para dar. Aqui é o nosso irmão do Commit Ethics, nosso irmão Bantu. Ele é um dos melhores para mim, é 99% dos melhores em termos de passar conhecimento sobre afrocentrismo e até conhecimento de espiritualidade africana. Para quem conhece inglês, melhor ainda, pode ir no canal dele. Mas aqui estou a fazer o favor de pôr as legendas e capturar mensagens apropriadas para este tema aqui, sobre descobrimentos nas Américas pelos africanos. Ele também tem algo importante a dizer. Acompanhe aí.
A very shocking narrative by our own brothers, sisters and scholars gaining traction now teaches that popular Atlantic slave trade is almost a lie. You can look at this YouTube and listen to this YouTube where they deal with it. They say DNA evidence proves African Americans are in fact native indigenous aborigines. They say no. The whole slave trade story was given to us, all of us, in reverse. That's what they say. So they say that Africans were not shipped from Africa to America. They say that the Africans, they say that the truth is that black Indians were shipped from America to Europe. They were then shipped from Spain to Africa as commodity for African resources. So what is he saying here? These black Indians, now mistaken as African Americans, mistaken by who? Were shipped back to America and classified as African slaves. This is a popular thinking. It's gaining traction. There are lots of people that believe and follow this. Then they say this part of history is what the school system fails to teach or to mention in history lessons. So they say, oh, this is a lie. But what the video or the speaker or the teachers who teach this fail to narrate is the period of slave trade, which is 500 years plus. They also don't talk about the about the white Arab slavery that took place, that is still there, which is almost 1,500 years going on, and the colonization and the destruction of African families. They don't talk about that. This is what is there. Why would such an elaborate scholarship be promoted? Who is behind this? Who stands to benefit? The bone of contention arises from the vital identity of who was the first to settle in America. Once we know that, we know who is fueling this hidden agenda, whose sole chief aim is to create a divisive wedge between black people in the United States and those in and from Africa. What kind of DNA that blinds people to the phenotype which everyone can see, which is the biggest problem? The phenotype, the color, what your appearance, the melanin, the carbon that you have. Europeans found people in America when they came there. Who were these people? Upon their arrival in the New World, European explorers found the land already teeming with native people. What ethnicity were these people? Were they the original natives or first Americans? Were they Africans, Red Indian or Asian? Let us share some naked facts concerning the first indigenous Native Americans. To weed out some blocking foliages, we must define some anthropological terms. As we do so, we hasten to clarify that European definitions are suspect and will be refined in our general conclusion. We will show what they are and the fallacious nature of these European terms. One term that combines all is autochthonous, which means indigenous or native, formed or originating in the place where found, ancient Athenians, Greeks, considered their ancestors to have sprung from the very soil of the region they inhabited. This is the same theme. There is a word that we are going to show you that means that exactly which is found in Africa. The word for any true-born Athenian is autochthon itself, springs from auto, meaning self, and chthon, meaning earth. The opposite of autochthonous is foreign, allochthonous, non-indigenous, non-native, imported, migrant, introduced, transplanted, which means all the Europeans in all the continents and all the countries are allochthonous. The indigenous people were there before they looked like that. These are the images that you really find or in textbooks or you are really told. So Columbus found people who looked like this. Some looked with a lot of copper, some very dark, some light, exactly like that. Who are these people? But before that, we have got callers who stand against African liberation, like Gates, Henry Gates III, promotes the white supremacist lie that Africans never crossed the Ethiopian Ocean, so-called Atlantic, prior to Columbus, which is a lie, because this is absolutely false. The first people in the Americans were Africans. Modern African scholars call these people the Black Native Americans. The Fugians, who are one of the oldest Native American tribes, carry the DM-174 haplogroup of the Andaman Islanders. You know those people that kill a pastor who wanted to teach them about Jesus? They look like that. This is the indigenous American, the African people who went to America looked like that. They looked like that more straightforward. Autochthon American looked like that. Today they are labeled a Black American like that, or Afro-American. And this is a native who could be naturalized, or Latino or Hispanic mixed. They look like, these are the ones that are promoted. Him and her are no longer promoted. Did you know that beginning in 1912, all non-reservation Indians were classified as black in Virginia? Correct. By Virginian Bureau of Vital Statistics, like that, straightforward, copper, black Cherokee, like that. And this is the one who they thought had no beards, and therefore the case of Cain. But they had beards. Black settled the Americans before 130,000 BCE. The peopling of the Americans by blacks is the first true Americans who were the first to settle in America. Black people were the original Americans, and very few people know this. We were here and there in America before the so-called Indian was there in North America. This is the people. This is the original copper colored. And this is the African, this Basarwa in Zimbabwe, Botswana, Namibia, so-called Bushmen today look like that, copper colored, straightforward. There is a Miss Gulan who unearthed documents from the days of the Louisiana Purchase, and they were under the Spanish territory in Florida. The last queen, the descendant of the last queen of the Chief Functa Nation looked like that. Montezuma looked like that. Montezuma or Muntu Zuma looked like that. Shaka Zulu, exactly with a spear, just like some of us. All people born in America are Native Americans, but not all autochthonous or came directly from the soil. This one came directly from the soil. Indigenous, this is not. No. This is the indigenous, copper colored, and these are allochthonous, foreigners, although they migrated. So these are Native Americans. Exposition Portland or Chief Skinny Cote 1905 looked like that. There is American again, looked like that in the Netherlands, in America. There is again Wishram tribe Chinook 1911 looked like that, like the Tonga, like the Africans, like the Nambia, like the Zulu, exactly like that. Facts now dominate educational system. When they teach about red Indians, they show pictures of yellow to white looking people and said they were red. In doing this, they are programming your mind. When you are shown the real indigenous owners of the United States, you will, as per training, as per software put in you, refuse to see them as Africans like that. Proof after proof showing that the first people here in America recorded with scientific anthropology, showing the skeleton findings, historical accounts, records, data, images from the early explorers, colonizers, settlers, and historians of who they encountered and how they described them. Even so, with so much overwhelming data correlating that the natives being copper colored, were actually called Negro, you will still refuse to accept this and continue to believe what Hollywood tell you. Native Americans and Australian Aborigines were 100% all positive, all blood type before colonization. Let that sink. These are facts. This is a modern American Indian fake. This is a modern American Indian child fake. This is whitewashed fake. This is the original of this whitewash. More of whitewashing. There is fake chief skin color, hair texture, facial features are concealed, but he is looking like that. He's an African. Straight. And this is not, he's a European. He's a mulatto. He's fake. Again, there is a European fake of the original. And again, the real Chief Oshkosh looked like that. Not this one, whitewash European looking Chief Oshkosh. Fake. And also fakes. The Florida Constitution by John 1671 looked like that. And now, 19th century, they're changing them now. Scientific clincher. Black history from the library of Brother Skipper. American black aborigines. The 12,000-year-old skull that they found and named Luzia, found in Lapa Vanzia in Brazil in 1975. European anthropologists and scholars and everybody else was excited that they stumbled on the ancient Mongoloids. Anthropologists were surprised to discover that Luzia, its features resembled those of Negroids, a black aboriginal. Many anthropologists now have accepted that these people, the Africans, were already in America 130,000 years before Common Era. In conclusion, therefore, what ethnicity were these people? Negroid. Were they the original natives or first Americans or autochthonous? Yes. Were they Africans? Yes. The first wave to come out of Africa. The slaves that were taken later is maybe the last wave or the fourth wave. Red Indians or Asians? No. These came from intermarriages and mixing. But what did these people call themselves? Here is a shocker. They called themselves Bantu. Unbelievable this as it may be, as proof, it's clear. One scholar who supplies this self-name had no clue at what she was doing or narrating. She didn't realize that she was giving the clue. So we quote her. As for Americans being called Red Indians, according to Ancient and Modern Britain, by David McCritchie, Dr. Huxley said that when they called American Indians red, they meant chocolate brown, which is black in color. That is why the Red Indians on the reservations and their descendants are being kicked out of the tribes and in many instances being told to go back to Africa. These people, the Europeans, know this. They know. Why? Let's not answer, but let's follow on. When the pilgrims arrived, they asked our autochthonous peoples of this land what they called themselves. Who are you? Just as they came into Africa, when they asked the Africans, who are you? The ancient mound builders, Kai people, Anasazi, Washowe, Lenape, and others repeatedly told these Europeans in their own languages that they were people. Bantu, Anu, Muntu. You can read more on this website. Straightforward, that's Bantu. We go now to prove more and add more flesh to this. The term Nyika is autochthonous because it gives us Nyuka image or germinate. These are the people, Nyuka. These are the Nyika. These are the Bantus. But these are in America, Indian settlements in America. They look like Southern African Bantus, right? Correct. The most powerful word you can ever learn if you are black, if you are brown, if you are African, is to master the term Bantu. It refers to the vital force as in physics, or the vital force as in chemistry, or committee mystery formulated in Bantu philosophy. The driver root is the word Ntu, and the bar spirit Ntu thing. From this stems all the other words describing the concept of a person, a thing, a place, and time, and its common elements in the concept of vital force, spirit, exactly like the indigenous people in America who were Bantus, and the Africans, and others all over the earth. Now, give me any other noun or word that describes a people with such richness. None, except this one, the indigenous, the original. The noun Bantu gives us Muntu, meaning person, spirit. Ba, it also gives us the word Kintu or Chinu or Kanu, meaning thing. Hantu, meaning place and time. And Kuntu, meaning synodality or philosophy. Thank you very much. Siyabonga Tatenta, this priest Rabbi Elem Dumizulu of Committee Hebrew Ethics. Subscribe to our channel and get in touch with us. Thank you. Goodbye.
Próximo trecho, continuando. Lembrando que a tradução do YouTube às vezes pode saltar uma palavra ou outra, mas o sentido é esse que vocês estão a ver. Continuando.
If the Cherokee Native Americans were black, why are they not so now? The racial changes in our lifetimes. This is their lens, the Cherokee Nation lens, and they were moved in a trail of tears to new territories. They were displaced. So why were they displaced? Who displaced them? And can we learn something from the reasons why they were displaced? This is their seal, the seal of the Cherokee Nation. Very powerful and very interesting. The Cherokee Nation had actually developed very much. They had an alphabet system that we are showing here. The Cherokee Nation, world famous for its turbulent and colorful past, is home to a second largest American Indian tribe in the United States. So they are very, very important. This fascinating visual history that spans 14 counties of northeast Oklahoma, from the Kansas River to the Kansas border, and features the capital. We give you the actual pronunciation of this capital. Tasekwa, the U.S. government's harsh treatment of the Cherokees, culminating in the notorious Trail of Tears. So there is something more to this, because the harsh treatment is only reserved to those that are oppressed, and also we want to name it as racism based. Who were the original Cherokeans? Who were moved across and oppressed like that? Were they like this? We are the Cherokees. Did America move people who look like this? Cherokee Nation again says descendants of Cherokee nigger slaves and worthy of citizenship. So were black people not part of Cherokees? Is that true? This is coming from a report in September 2011 where they exercise racism. You go to Google, you get about 7.3 million results in 57 seconds of the same story from the BET.com, from Wikipedia, from various websites explaining why the blacks were denied and refused the rights in Cherokee. The Cherokee Tribal Council also rejected Marilyn Vann, even though she has ancestors who walked the Trail of Tears. So it's racism, straightforward, clear forward. Were Indians or original Indians, as they want to tell us, exercising racism? Or the mulattoes? Or the Europeans? Who has taken over? Who is exercising racism? Yes. But these Europeans are called true native. Is that correct? Can these be true Native Americans, honestly speaking? Did Columbus find, when he got into America, did he find these people, these Europeans? Honestly, let's be very serious. In modern times, as Europeans explorers made pictures of the flora, fauna, and peoples in places they traversed, they found the people inhabiting the Americans and made people who they found there. And these people they found there and made pictures of them were purely Negroid, Africans, and Bantus. But now the question is, who taught you that there were no blacks in the Americans before the white imported African slaves? Yet the images they drew and show us are of purely Negroid, Bantu-looking people. Do you believe European history now? Do you believe Western movies? Do you believe anything that contradicts that there's so many gray areas like this? Scientists, we know, have known that the Americans have been settled by Mongol Asians for only about 12,000 years ago. The Clovis proof. Were they Mongoloids? Were they Asians? Why don't they say they were Asians? Why they call them Indians? We know that there is hard proof that shows otherwise. That long before that, perhaps 130,000 to going beyond BP present time and more, there was an indigenous autochthonous race that is found there. It was what others know today as black race. They called themselves Bantu or just people. There they are. There they are, the images of the authentic people. This is science. This image came from Luzia, originally published by the Brazilian magazine Veja in August 1999. They don't look like Europeans. They don't look like Asians. They don't look like mulattoes. They look like pure indigenous Negritos, black people, African Bantus. They look like that. This is Naya 2015 in January in Mexico, America. First published in National Geographic magazine. Looks like that. Authentic Bantu black people. These are the authentic people of America. No confusion. So we are now dealing with created history, with artificial history. Anyone who does not come to resemble this, whether they call them native, whether they call them Indian, whether they call them African American or anything, they are not authentic. The authentic is like this, black, like me, like every African, like every Negrito you found anywhere on earth. Do you now believe DNA as proof for this, to define these people against your eyes? From European sources to know which race these people are. But what happened? Let's look. And we know that a pictorial look of the Cherokee nation will teach us this, will teach us the truth. Freedmen, children, and racism, the Cherokee nation, we know she's authentic. She's a Bantu. She's a Mutu. She's authentic. And now we get narratives and journalists who write like this, to sowing division and showing confusion. So let's see how they write it. They say within the fabric of American identity is woven a story that has long been invisible. The lives and the experiences of people who share African American, wrong, and Native American ancestry, wrong, already dividing one people into two, so that they divide and rule and conquer. African and Native peoples, wrong language, wrong jargon, don't listen to this. Came together in Americans, wrong, they were already together. They were one people. Over centuries, African Americans and Native Americans created shared history. No, they are one people. They share one history, not histories. They share one community, not communities. We are one family, not families. We had one way of life, not ways of life. We had one prejudice against us. We had one law, many twists as a people together. We are not divided. The only difference is that there was a group that came millions of years from Africa and inhabited and became autochthonous in America. And then another group came through slavery. And they are confusing the whole lot. And the foreigner who came via the Bering Strait, and also how they were mixed. It's another story. There we are. A focus on the ongoing identity crisis of American Negro, created by artificial history makers. In 1600s, they called us savages. In 1700s, they called us natives. In 1800s, they called us niggers. In 1900s, they called us darkies. In 1910s, they called us the pickles. In 1920s, they called us coons. In 1930s, they called us spooks. In 1940s, they called us boy or boy. In 1950s, they called us colored. In 1960s, they called us Negroes. In 1970s, they called us brothers. In 1980s, they called us blacks. In 1990s or 1988, they called us African Americans. They still continue to call us names. Why? To confuse us and to give us our false names. These are the autochthonous people, indigenous people of America. And this is the native who is a Latino, who is a foreigner. And this is what they call African Americans today. These are the indigenous, original, authentic, indigenous, natives, autochthonous people, which we see in the day. We see a few changes. And now the tricks are coming. He is not. He is from Italy. And he is one of those who is chasing and declaring that the Cherokees are not authentic. The indigenous looked like that, straightforward, with no question marks. They were Bantus. They called them people. This is the Negroid type. A Crow tribesman, 1873. Proper, pure African phenotype. That's what we deal with. Deal with what your eyes see, not with what you are told by DNA. We are not going to tolerate and accept that. This is a Comanche. He is not native. He is not indigenous. He could have been in America longer than the slaves that were imported later, but he is not authentic. Pure, straight, clear, no complaint. They are authentic. These are two Cheyenne chiefs, 1924, struck our black people. How the Cherokee nation and all of us are going through a transitional period where we are being destroyed and neutralized slowly and easily. We see there again, we have seen how it is done now. They are changing and they are whitening them up. And today, the Cherokee people look like this. So when people study history, they are basing it on that, not on the authentic, not on the original. There we are, how we have been replaced. Now this is a Cherokee. And now this is a Cherokee chief, a woman, female chief. How the mighty have fallen, how we have been destroyed. And today, she won a prize as a Cherokee Indian from Tulsa. They call her full blood. She is not. She is a European. She can never be an African or a Bantu. She is from Europe. Unfortunately, just like many other indigenous people, peace-loving people, Black Native Americans, the Cherokee and many others and all others did not keep a written history. They had oral, authentic history. And sadly, oral history against the current technologies is pretty worthless after the third generation, unless there are guilds or griots that guard it and guide it. Unfortunately, this is what we have to live with. But fortunately, as divine hand would have it, European explorers made pictures of the flora, the fauna, and the peoples in places they traversed. Therefore, in America, when they went to America, they drew the people they found inhabiting the United States of America, who were Bantus, who were Africans, black people. Realizing their mistakes now, they are deliberately distorting everything by dragging in the suspect fallacious DNA proofs, planting false revisions of history, planting and teaching divisions, and raising scholars that plant divisions amongst the first authentic Bantus and the other Bantus that came later through the Atlantic slave trade. And there is a key that we are going to show you today. And in the case of the Cherokee, outright racism against the black people and killing them. Here is our key and here is your key. Any picture that is not Bantu, throw it in the garbage if they tell you it represents the original American. Any explanation, whether DNA, whether blood test, whether anything is Photoshop, throw it in the bin. If it does not come up phenotypically as black and as Bantu and melaninated and charcoal. Anyone who teaches today, whether in America or Black Hebrew Israelite or American tribesmen or anybody who teaches that they are different from Bantus, throw them in the garbage bin. Don't follow them. They are divisive. They are dividing us. Any black person in Africa or anywhere else on earth who teaches that we are different from the indigenous Comanches, Cherokees, Arawak, any indigenous black person who teaches that we are different, throw that person, don't follow that person. He is or she is teaching division, whether she's a doctor, a professor, or what. Never be distracted by such people. We are the indigenous autochthones, not of Cherokee land only, but of the whole earth. I am not your cousin as other black Americans or African Americans or Indians wanted to tell me. I am you. Don't tell me that I'm your cousin. I am you. I am an American. I am an indigenous Australian. I am an indigenous Maori. I am an indigenous Papua New Guinean. I'm an indigenous Vietnamese. I'm an indigenous Chinese. I'm an indigenous European. On the earth is mine. Not small little territories. Not divisive territories like I am Zambian, here I'm a Sherekian, here I'm an Oninawa, here I'm Ojibwa, now I'm Nigerian. That is stupidity. We call it sovereignty stupidity. We are one people. This is our key. Therefore, the Cherokee is me. I am a Sherekian. Me, as you see me, priest, teacher, Rabbi Elem Tumizulu, I am an American Indian. I am an Aboriginal. That's the teaching. That's what the Spirit says today and forevermore. That's what we must brag about. That's what we must grab. Indeed, we are one people. Bantu, black. Whether you want to call me Bayogulia, Katabra, Biotak, Cherokee, Cheyenne, Chikoso, Delaware, Comanche, Mahican, Menoni, Navajo, Nipmuc, Souke, Fox, Shone, Sika, Wampogu, Ottawa, Ojibwa, Naragsense, Ilini, Huron, Iri, Iroquois, Pequot, Potawatomi, it's me. Whether you call me Ndebele, it's me. Whether you call me Igbo, it's me. Whether you call me Sudanese, it's me. Whether you call me Negrito, it's me. Whether you call me nigger, it's me. So this is Priest Teacher Rabbi LM to Zulu. This is my email. Get in touch with us. Subscribe to our channel. Hamiti Buru Ethics. Let's fight. Let's unite. Let's be one. Tatenda. Thank you. Siabonga. Salani Kashe. Goodbye.
Ok, continuando.
See you. Hero of Brasil. Por demorou 3 séculos para o Brasil reconhecer oficialmente o uniso verdadeiro herói popular do Brasil. Why did it take Brazil 3 centuries to officially recognize one of its true popular heroes? Also, Brazil was the last country in the Western world to abolish slavery. By the time it abolished in 1888, an estimated 4 million slaves had been imported from Africa to Brazil, of which 40% of the total number of slaves brought to America went to Brazil. Is Brazil an African country? Statistics would show that Brazil is a unique nation. For instance, it has produced great and talented players. We see here Nascimento or Pele, one of the greatest footballers the earth has ever seen. And Brazil has won 5 World Cups, is the highest of all the countries to have won that. But there are real questions that we need to ask today, questions that involve race. These questions will bring a number of hard facts concerning Brazil. While it is unique, there have been thousands of warriors in many fields, but in Brazil, one hero was not officially recognized for almost 300 years. Who is this hero? Why did it take so long? What did he do? Maybe the other question that we have to ask is who is indigenous in Brazil? And actually, who should rule it if we are to go by the democratic principle of the majority? First, let's clarify the issue of who is a true indigenous Brazilian. We see that the images that we are seeing here, these are images of true Brazilian. But the official explanation would be a huge lie. The Indians who battled the Portuguese for land, we are told, are indigenous. But many of the Indians were killed and many others were forced to migrate into the interior of the country. Comparative morphology has shown that there were 2 types of phenotypically different races in Brazil. The Native Americans, as we are officially told, they are almost like Asians. But the earliest South Americans tend to be more similar to present-day Aboriginals of Australia, Melanesians, and Sub-Saharan Africa. More of this shows that a skull that has been discovered, or that was discovered, according to this website that is being shown here, changes history and solidifies the answer of who is indigenous in Brazil or Southern America or America or the whole of America. And the fossil first discovered in Brazil in 1975, but only recently found to come from a woman who lived 11.5 thousand years ago, shows there were human beings on that continent long before Asian immigration. This was said by anthropologist Ricardo Ventura Santos, and you can read it in the Japanese Time of September 22, 1999. And they then worked around that skull and discovered that and gave her the name Lucia. She looks like that. That is the image of the indigenous Brazilian. And the other mock-up of what Lucia looks like is like that. 12,000 before Common Era BCE. African, proper, true, original African. This skull alters the theory on colonization of Americas, which means the people that were then found there to be the Red Indians or the American Indian was a mulatto of the indigenous black people and the migration or the Asian who migrated into America. Before Lucia's appearance, paleontologists had been working on the theory that the earliest Americans were the Asian ancestors of the Indians that European colonizers encountered when they arrived on the American continent 500 years ago. This now is a lie, according to this skull. This is a total lie. The truth has just been revealed here. So, black people in Brazil, the majority, but they are under tremendous siege. Why? We need a hero. There is a precedent about this. So, this is the hero that we are talking about. Who is this man? Who is he? Can he represent the 12,000 year period, 12,000 before Common Era, BCE, and pull up today and come up today to liberate the black indigenous Brazilian and the descendants? A black person is murdered in Brazil every 23 minutes. What's startling about that statistic and Brazil's high record murder rate in general is that it is all too often the Brazilian police responsible for killing black mothers, fathers, future doctors, promising artists, and composers. You can watch this video. Let's watch this video a little bit.
54% of the Brazilian population is of African descent. You can see the legacy of the slave trade in the faces here. Brazil was the last country in the Western world to abolish slavery. It did so in 1888, 20 years after the US did. But despite the fact that more than half this country has African roots, you may have noticed that almost all of the faces that you have seen so far in the clips that we've shown you from Brazilian television, either corporate media or religious channels, have one thing in common. They're white.
If you turn on the TV in Brazil, there are hardly any black actors or presenters, hardly any black journalists. This is across all of the mainstream channels. We are not seen there. The invisibility of black people in spaces of power is glaring.
Just go to the newsroom of any newspaper or television station and look at the journalists working there. Almost all of them are white.
For example, when we try to raise the issue of black genocide, that every 23 minutes a young black person is murdered in Brazil, how does it end up being portrayed? It's always shootouts in the peripheries and the criminals were killed. There isn't even a narrative that serves to inform the public of the facts in Brazil, a country that was the last in the world to abolish slavery.
Finally, back to Globo and the story of the Brazilian TV beauty queen Nayara Justino. As examples of media malpractice in this country go, it is nowhere near the worst, but it is revealing. The title, Mulata Globaleza, was created by Globo. It's a beauty contest tied to its coverage of Brazil's annual carnival. That word, mulata, which some say has its roots in the word mula, meaning mule, is considered racist. A word loaded with colonial connotations, chosen by Globo for a beauty contest ostensibly held to celebrate racial integration. Viewers get to vote for the Globaleza, and 2014 marked a first. The winner, Nayara Justino, was dark-skinned and unmistakably black.
A Globeleza 2014 é Nayara.
Not everyone approved. Online trolls called Justino a monkey, a darky. A few months later, Globo had Justino replaced. It set the results of the vote aside and simply picked another woman. Globo insisted that its decision had nothing to do with skin color, that the choice came down to artistic fitness for the role. It said artistic merit prevails. The woman Globo picked to replace Justino had African roots as well, but her skin tone is much lighter. And, as one of the country's relatively few newsreaders of African descent will tell you, in the Brazilian media, racial integration has its limits.
I'm a black woman, but I have a skin tone that is a little lighter, and I can say that I am privileged in this because the darker your skin is, the more you have to suffer in Brazil.
There was an official whitening policy in Brazil. The initiative that brought European immigrants here after the abolition of slavery was not accidental. It was done in order to whiten the population, because they believed that within 200 years, there would be no more blacks in Brazil. But we're still here, in this country, which still denies its African origins, and which runs on the idea that the whiter, the better.
You can read more on this website, miamiherald.com. We have seen from that video that there is a concerted effort to eliminate the black people in Brazil. So Brazilians must have an indigenous leader, an African in the mold of the great Zumbi dos Palmares, who is shown here, born 1655 and died 1694. This is the hero that Brazil does not want the world to know. Although they have a date and celebrate him, but for 300 years they were quiet about it. Now they show him, but they have a program to reduce the black population. What did Zumbi do? Where did he come from? Who is he? What did he do? Zumbi dos Palmares was born free in the Palmares region of Brazil in the year 1655. The last of the military leaders of the Quilombo, Kimbundu word for Quilombo, of the North Mbundu Bantu from Angola, meaning warrior village or settlement of Palmares. The Quilombos dos Palmares were a free society, or Maroons, or refugee slaves, in all South American Republic, which included the present-day Brazilian coastal city, states of Alagoas, Brazil. Today, Zumbi is known as one of the greatest or great historic leaders of Brazil. So he fought for freedom, but he didn't fight alone. Zumbi believed in all or nothing, victory or death principle. This was written by historian Desio Feitas, author of Palmeiras War of Slaves. This is Zumbi, the heroes. But he had a wife, Dandara dos Palmeiras. Dandara dos Palmeiras, shown here, was a black woman married to Zumbi. Dandara dos Palmeiras was a great warrior on the moon for the freedom of black people in the 17th century. Conquered space leadership in Palmeiras struggle and faced all these struggles in Palmeiras. Zumbi was the companion or the husband of Palmeiras and was followed on his side by this woman. She died in 1694 during a battle to defend Coelombo dos Macacos. Because she didn't want to be captured by the Portuguese and go into slavery, she committed suicide. Other women also fought in many battles, but are also often forgotten. As the case of Teresa de Benguela, Coelombo leadership in the 13th century. She took over the Coelombo laws in Mato Grosso after the death of her husband. Later, he commanded Coelombo Quadrite, who grew up under his guard and even aided Bolivian and Brazilian Indians. Teresa was arrested by the Portuguese crown and committed suicide by denying slavery. So these are the heroines and heroes that we should look at today as we want to liberate our black people from Chinese invasion, from many other battles that are facing us. Capoeira. Capoeira shown here, which we must study and every black person must be capable of doing it. Remember Zumba dance? But this is better and far much lethal and so powerful than Zumba dance. Black Brazilians of unknown conditions and origin watching a capoeira ball, painting by Johannes Maurice Rugendas, 1835. Capoeira is a Brazilian martial art that combines elements of dance, acrobatics, and music and is sometimes referred to as a game. It was developed in Brazil by black people. This is what we need to practice, to teach our kids, of males and females. Many people are practicing this and benefiting a lot. So in conclusion, we have seen that we have a hero who set a precedent of liberating a people. This is what our politicians, these are heroes that our politicians can look at and study and implement, and anyone can implement it. This is Zumbi of Angolan descent, a Bantu who went to a land which was founded by Asian Bantus, but later on the Asians, the mulattoes rose up, and these are the ones that are shown on television everywhere. So in conclusion, therefore, in Brazil, the warrior hero Zumbi was not officially recognized for almost 300 years. Why? Because Zumbi believed in all or nothing type of mentality, victory or death. For all the current and future battles facing our people on earth, this is a worthy attitude to live by. This is a worthy idea to be engrossed in. All or nothing, victory or death. Committee Hebrew Ethics, our mission is to teach revealed applied knowledge that enables any black person achieve their goal. All or nothing, winning or death. Thank you all. Siyabonga Tatenda. This is Priest Rabbi LM Tunizulu of Committee Hebrew Ethics. Subscribe to our channel and let us walk together. This is our website, livespiritofamenchem.com. Visit us and contact us on this email, lmtunizulu@gmail.com, and let us all again win in this war. Thank you.
Sure. Skip this ad. Just
ok, pronto. Vocês viram aqui esse percurso desses trechos de pequenos vídeos, né? A gente também tira do YouTube porque a gente também cada dia aprende. Nós já sabemos disso há bastante tempo, só queríamos vos passar. Não vamos estender aqui a conversa. Basicamente, viram a primeira parte que Cristóvão Colombo foi desmascarado. Na segunda parte é um dos nossos irmãos africanos, Committee Ethics, que veio com 3 trechos de vídeos desmascarar mais ainda, porque há uma onda de africanos negros nascidos na América, principalmente nos Estados Unidos, que se dizem que não são africanos. Há aquele separatismo criado pela própria supremacia branca, no sentido de continuar a mistificar de que o Colombo é que descobriu aquelas terras e então
só encontrou lá os índios.
Só encontrou lá os índios e por aí vai, quando na verdade já estavam lá povo negro bantus e já estavam lá antes. Estimam-se.
Que também os próprios índios encontraram lá. Conforme nós dissemos da outra vez da história, lembra-se quando nós dissemos que os nossos ancestrais é que deixaram os índios viverem lá.
Se vocês virem num dos vídeos que nós fizemos aí para trás, dos Olmecas, nós dissemos que aquela população já estava lá há mais de 100 mil anos. Aqui o nosso irmão Camitex veio falar de 130 mil anos. Aqui, então, o resto tudo, os escravos que foram para lá, isso já foi mais recente, já foi mais fresco. Os nossos já estavam lá antes, nós já estávamos lá antes. Essa onda de escravos. Então não vale a pena pensar que qualquer negro que esteja na América foi tudo como escravo. Não. Esse é o mito que é vendido para parecer que os índios eram os donos da terra. Esses índios têm origens de alguns povos da Ásia.
Polinésia, né?
É Polinésia?
Vocês sabem, são da Ásia.
Mas há várias versões. Dali não eram. Dali não eram, porque eles encontraram lá os nossos irmãos, que eles chamam de Olmecas, mas são bantus africanos. Encontraram lá e nós fomos misericordiosos, deixando-os ficar lá.
Foi, segundo o que contam, foi porque eles estavam numa estação muito perigosa, porque havia muito gelo e podia acabar com eles. Então foi através do...
Eles vieram via Sibéria.
Da Sibéria.
Dali do Alasca.
Da Sibéria estava muito frio.
Yeah.
Então... Ai, eu já esqueci o outro.
Ok, pronto.
Ai, vou lembrar.
Então, pronto, aqui o nosso irmão Camitex mostrou aqui várias mais evidências. Então, é isso que nós tínhamos para mostrar aqui. É bom para o povo... A questão do Brasil é séria, mas não é só o Brasil, é o continente americano todo. Então é bom para principalmente os irmãos afros que vivem nas Américas acordarem, pararem de dançar rumba só e pararem de dançar um pouco do samba e do funk, começar a partilhar essas mensagens, porque as Américas também são dos africanos. Essa é que é a moral da história.
A América é a extensão da África, nós sempre dissemos isso. E os nossos ancestrais vinham como extensão da África.
Exatamente. Até porque nós também mostramos aí num dos vídeos, acho que é o dos Olmecas, em que mostramos pirâmides que foram feitas com a mesma tecnologia das pirâmides do Egito. Estamos a falar que são a mesma engenharia. Essa mesma engenharia vem das mesmas pessoas. Essa história então do Colombo, 500 anos é muito fresco. Muito fresco. De 500 anos para 130 mil anos atrás, é muito tempo.
E o próprio Colombo não disse que descreveu coisas que havia na África, que encontrou lá na América?
Exatamente.
Isso foi como prova, então não foram os índios.
Atenção.
Senão ele tinha dito que foram os índios.
E agora, vocês que vivem mesmo no continente, que vivem dentro do continente, em África, não vale a pena negligenciar esses vídeos aqui, esse de hoje. Isso aí só terá que mostrar. Se a mentira também foi aplicada ali, também foi aplicada em África. Em vários sentidos. Em vários sentidos. Quer dizer que põe a história que se aprende nas escolas, tudo em descrédito. Essas verdades que aparecem aqui, põe qualquer livro escrito pela supremacia de história, principalmente história e áreas sociais, no campo social, principalmente história, antropologia, põe em descrédito. Já provaram, são grandes mentirosos. Aliás, o primeiro trecho do vídeo foi mesmo um deles que vem desmascarar. O primeiro senhor que aparece ali. Pronto, é isso. Não vou estender mais. Ok? Da minha parte não tem mais nada a dizer.
O que eu quero dizer é que temos que parar de de nos odiarmos, de nos discriminarmos e olhamos uns aos outros como um só. Tantos que estão na América, como estão na África, como estão na Europa, como estão na Ásia, como estão, como chamar Médio Oriente, que também é África. Temos que nos olhar como um só e nos unimos conforme aquela parte daquele herói do Brasil.
Zumbi dos Palmares.
Conforme os zumbis, temos que seguir o exemplo dele. Porque a causa para todos é só uma. Vocês ouviram muito bem nas reportagens do último vídeo acerca do Brasil, que a intenção deles é mesmo reduzir a população negra do Brasil através dos casamentos interracial. É ainda que eles querem acabar com vocês. Nascer mais mulatos, mais mulatos, mais mulatos, assim vocês desaparecem daí.
E do mulato vai para branco.
Claro que do mulato vai para branco, porque eles não são burros.
Depois do mulato...
É a mesma coisa que eles tentam fazer, é a mesma coisa que eles tentam fazer em Angola.
Vai clareando, depois vira branco.
Sim, é a mesma coisa que eles vão fazer também no nosso lado, em Angola. Só que o angolano não deu conta. Em Moçambique, o português, entre todas as colônias, ele é um pouco mais astuto em termos de raça. Ele já sabe, se eu me misturar com esse, vou acabar com eles. O português joga mais nisso.
Sim.
Enquanto o francês e o inglês, quase assim, nós não queremos intimidade com eles, tá vendo? Só são poucos, nós não queremos mesmo coisa com eles. O português já não. Ele vai na intimidade com eles para acabar com eles. Quanto mais mulatos nascer, para eles melhor. É isso que eles tentam fazer ao longo desses anos todos com o povo brasileiro. Por isso que eu tenho... Até eu sou capaz de fazer... Estou a fazer pesquisar mais. Por isso é que os casamentos interracial é também uma das causas para nós acabarmos. Mas como nossos irmãos querem ser como os brancos, então por isso é que casam com os brancos. Porque no fim, esses casamentos, eles nunca duram para a vida toda. Porque há sempre choques culturais. Há sempre racismo em ambas as partes. O casamento interracial e as amizades interracial é que não estão a vos fazer ver quem são os vossos verdadeiros inimigos. E os vossos inimigos jogam com isso. Porque eles já sabem que vocês querem ser como eles. Querem ter sucesso como eles. Querem ter tudo que eles têm. Enquanto devia ser o contrário. A gente não aprende com nossos erros. Agora, nós temos que nos unir todos para seguir o exemplo dos nossos reis. Do terceiro vídeo, o Zumba, né?
Zumbi dos
Palmeiras. Ele foi um grande exemplo. Palmares, porque foi um exemplo para vocês. Para fortalecer vocês aí, povo negro no Brasil. Vocês devem seguir o exemplo dele. E outra coisa, a capoeira, conforme ele diz. A capoeira é uma arte que vai nos ajudar muito para a batalha. E é uma maneira também de conexão ancestral à capoeira. Por isso, meus irmãos negros no Brasil, parem desses casamentos interracial e tentam proteger mais, fazer prevalecer mais a nossa raça. Porque eles querem mesmo tirar o Brasil de nós. Eles querem ficar com o Brasil. Copacabana está gostoso demais para eles. Por isso é que vocês são os mais atacados. Por isso é que vocês são os que mais sofrem. Porque é vocês mesmo que eles querem vos acabar. Porque eles sabem da história. E eles sabem muito bem, se o povo negro brasileiro partir para o ataque, é o fim deles. Eles sabem disso, porque é onde tem a maior população negra na América Latina. Se vocês se unirem, a vossa união, é o medo para eles. Porque eles sabem que vocês vão acabar com eles. É isso que eles não querem que a gente faça. Vocês têm que começar a criar a união entre vocês. Ubuntu Mahat, espiritualidade, meditação. Chamam vossos ancestrais. Porque é com vocês que nós estamos a contar. Porque vossos irmãos na África também, principalmente Angola, estão a dormir demais. É com vocês que eu estou a contar. São vocês também que vão nos ajudar a libertar a África. Por isso pensem. Deixam um pouco desses carnavais. Esses carnavais foi posto para a vossa distração. Só está a vos distrair. Por isso pensem. Vamos seguir o exemplo do zumbi das palmeiras. Despalmados. Eu estou sempre a esquecer despalmados. Vamos seguir o exemplo dele. Que ele nos deixou o caminho meio andado. Vamos acabar esse caminho. Na paz dos nossos ancestrais, irmãos. Otep.
Otep.